security and okay, sorry. I was confused. So again, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in our regional program on energy security and climate change based in Rabat to this second session of the Water Media Community of Practice, organized together with our dear friends and cooperation partner, SEVAS. The idea of this community of practice is to provide you a platform for dialogue and exchange where you can share knowledge and find new opportunities of collaboration with other media professionals in the region. And as I already said, today is the second session of the Water Media Community of Practice. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join you last time in mid-December, as I was traveling, my only trip since the pandemic has started, but unfortunately at that time. Today, though, I'm glad to be with you, as we will be discussing the topic of ethics in water journalism, especially transparency and accountability. We have a fantastic speaker on this topic, Dr. Nick Hepworth, who will be introduced in detail by Hannah. We're very glad you joined us, Nick, and I would like to thank you already very much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. We also have an input on the Google News Initiative Innovation Challenge, which could be very interesting for you, but more on this in a short while from Hannah. And as we wouldn't be gathered here today without Hannah, Yannick, Cora, and Ovis, therefore I would like to use this occasion also and thank them very much for their continuous commitment and efforts. And just a few words on our topics today, if I still have time, Hannah. We at Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, a German political foundation, strongly believe in the need of transparency and accountability in every sphere, be it in governmental structures, public administration, or also in the private sector. And in media, these two principles are also of crucial importance, as you carry a high responsibility as journalists and media professionals. You can shape the public debate and the ideas of your audience, which could be wide parts of the population. And this goes for media pieces published in traditional media like newspapers or magazine, but even more so for online media pieces, which can be widely shared on social media in only a few instances and a few clicks. And we already have seen the contrary. Media has been utilized unethically to deviate public opinion from or towards certain political or religious, for example, also ideologies, globally and especially also in the MENA region. And as water, one of the topics on which you create articles and other media content, is a subject for regional conflict in the MENA region, especially with regards to transboundary water management of water bodies shared by several countries or groups of population. Media institutions could try to tamper with and alter the public opinion and the perception through different methods like defaming or the infamous so-called fake news. At the same time, we can see water journalism is gaining ground in the MENA region, and for that reason, it is essential that MENA water and environmental journalists like you report ethically and objectively on local, national, and transnational water topics. And as a political foundation, we at Konrad Adenauer Stiftung believe in democracy and elections and in accountability of elected decision makers towards their voters. And we believe that these decision makers can be highly motivated to take favorable action when voted on by an informed public, a public who is aware whom to hold accountable when it comes to an existential topic like water and sanitation management in their countries and also in the wider region. And this is one of the reasons why we need ethical, investigative water journalists in the MENA region and beyond. So we would like to encourage you to use today's meeting to reflect further on these topics and to propose ideas you would like to discuss in our next sessions. Thank you very much for being here with us today, and I'm looking forward to learn more about you and your work in the discussion today. Thank you very much, and back to Hannah.
Thank you so much, Daniela. It's great to have you with us, as always, in the Konrad Adenauer Foundation team. So before we dive into it, let's take a really quick look at the agenda. Let me just quickly share my screen here. All right. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Daniela already introduced this by and large. We're going to have a little Zoom roulette now, which hopefully will help us all connect a bit with each other, despite the virtual challenges that we're all facing. Then we're going to be hearing from Sarah Hartley from the Google News Initiative Innovation Challenge. Really, really awesome opportunity that I would encourage all of you to take a look at. Then Nick, of course, is going to talk to us about water journalism, accountability, and corporate water management. You all mentioned last time in the first community of practice that you're very interested in learning more about accountability and ethics related to water journalism, and kind of what the role of journalists is in this topic. So Nick has prepared an awesome input for us today, and of course you'll also be able to ask him all of your questions. After this, we want to hear from you. Some of you have already suggested a few topics that you would like to share, that you would like to touch upon, especially if it's related to ethics, which is kind of the theme of the day. So this is your time to share what you're working on, what your concerns are. And of course, again, as you know, this community of practice is very collaborative. It's very, much based on co-creation. So we would actually like to draw upon your input to define what our next topic is going to be, because we're hopefully going to be setting up a third community of practice meeting in around 2 months. We have some members here that were already with us during the last CoP in December, as well as some new faces. So again, welcome to all of you. This is our team for today. You've already heard from Daniela. She's joined by Hamza, also from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. And from the side of CWAS / the Blue Peace Media Lab, we have myself. My name is Hannah Wutzel. We have Yannick Hermann Friede joining us from Berlin, and Cora Craigmile joining us from London. And without further ado, I would like to ask Cora to put us into random breakout rooms. We're going to play a game that's called Zoom Roulette. So you'll be joined by 2 other colleagues from this community. And we would like you to just take 3 minutes to quickly introduce yourself, say who you are, who you're working for, what are you working for, what your interest in the water topic is. And then if you have any time left over, maybe do a little bit of first brainstorming and how we can better practice impartiality, accountability, better ethics when it comes to reporting on sensitive water issues in the MENA region. So Cora, if you're ready, I think you can send us out right now. We're going to do 3 turns. So you will be put into those breakout rooms 3 times. Then we'll come back to plenary and we'll be joined by Sarah from Google. Thank you.
And I have shared, hello everyone, great to have you all here. I have shared the 2 things to discuss in the chat, so you can check there. All right, see you soon. Hi, Bilal. Hi, Bilal.
Hi, Cora. How are you?
Very well, good to have you here. I am going to quickly send you to a breakout room to discuss a few things.
Thank you.
Amazing. And if you can turn the camera on, even better.
Yes, but I was very busy.
No
I am.
problem. Great. See you in a few minutes.
Okay. I think we're almost actually, we're running a little bit.
Nice to be here, of course.
Nice to have you, Sarah. We're having a little bit of a time delay, actually. So it's almost already time for Sarah Hartley's input. Cora, do we have any updates?
Yes.
Yes, Sarah's here. She's been
Sarah's
here.
here already.
Yeah, I have to apologize for sending her to the camera without informing her.
It's always great to start with a little surprise, I suppose.
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. Then Cora, please take us on.
Yeah, so we'll jump straight into an input from Sarah. We are incredibly privileged to be joined by Sarah Hartley, who is a program manager at Google, and she is part of the team involved in the Google News initiative, and they've just launched the second Innovation Challenge. And we've got her here today for a few minutes, so she'll give us an introduction and then have any questions for her ready on how to apply for the challenge, etc. So without further ado, I'm going to spotlight you, Sarah. Thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Cora. And thanks to all of you for inviting me to come along. I'm going to kind of just run through some slides, give you a quick overview of the Innovation Challenge, which is obviously open to all of you to apply to. And we'd love to see your applications. I'm so sorry that I won't be able to be here for very long this afternoon. We only arranged this in very short notice, so I'm afraid I do have another meeting to go to. So I will start by hopefully sharing my screen. Let's have a look. And I'll just run through it really quickly, but obviously I want to leave enough time for questions. Are you seeing my screen? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Super. Okay. So the Innovation Challenge, it's an open call for funding. And as I say, it's open to every sort of news innovator, freelancers, anybody basically working in the eligible regions. Can be non-profit, for-profit, small, large, whatever. It is open to just about every sort of news innovator you can think of. So depending on where you are in the region, just check the eligibility of the countries, but most Middle East countries are there. Just to highlight what it is, it's basically to provide fundings for creative projects that demonstrate opportunities to increase reader engagement and support new business models. So it's very much about future innovation, about engaging your readers and doing things, new things, basically. So just to elaborate a little bit what we mean by audience engagement and business models, we're looking for things that ideas and projects to make your users more interested. We know that more engaged users, more loyal users, obviously help your business go forward. So we want to hear about ways of increasing the time they spend with you, how you might encourage more pages per visit, more loyalty in order for your organization to be more sustainable. The range of these projects can be very varied. Some of them have been in the past when we funded them, there have been efforts like for subscriptions or membership schemes. Any new ways to focus on reader revenue very much encouraged. And they could be around new digital products and services that you want to bring to market. How this works is we'll fund up to $150,000 for a successful project. And that would be a maximum of 70% of the overall cost. We'll pay for things like personnel, engineering, equipment, marketing, but what we don't fund is the editorial segment of your work. Obviously, that's something you do. we are looking here for specific projects that we can fund, and we will provide up to 70% of the overall costs. It's really one application per organisation, but in the event of like being part of a large media group, then you could have up to 3 projects, 1 per brand in your large media group. And applications have to be made in English. So just to sum up, we're looking specific projects around online news. The main component is digital, but that doesn't mean everything there has to be digital. It could be a mix of things, a mix of print, digital, broadcast, whatever. But the main component for this project that's going to receive funding should be digital. And we're very, very supportive of things that are collaborative. The whole ethos of the innovation challenges is really to have an impact on the news ecosystem. So we like collaborative projects. Obviously, they bring more people from the ecosystem together. It's going to have a bigger impact. Just a quick thing on things that aren't eligible. We don't want to waste your time putting applications in for things that aren't eligible. So we wouldn't fund things that are only about content creation. We wouldn't fund something that's just an upgrade to your CMS or some legacy publishing system. We don't fund training or education. And also we need all our applications to have some sort of monetization plan. It doesn't have to be revenue. It could be sustainability if you're a non-profit, but there should be a monetization plan identified. And we don't fund pure research. This isn't an academic research grant. It's funding for an innovation project. The criteria we use to choose things, as I mentioned, that impact on the news ecosystem is very important to us. This innovativeness, we let you define what innovation is, but we'd expect there to be some sort of use of technology there. We look at how feasible it is. This isn't kind of a moonshot. This is something that will actually be delivered. So we're looking to see if you're the right people to do it and if it's doable. We also want to inspire others in the news ecosystem. So we'll be looking at how you might inspire others, what you will do to inspire them. Maybe you'll be writing blog posts, or you might do a series of podcasts or something. How will you get the message out so it could inspire others with what you do? And we will be asking questions about your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is very important to Google, and we are trying to bring this agenda to the news ecosystem and find out what it is your organization is doing in this area. Or maybe it's your readership that comes into this area, or maybe it's the content that you produce, but we'd like to hear more about that. The applications are open now. They're open till April the 12th, and all the applications that come into us will be reviewed by 2 groups. First of all, there's the project team. I'm one of the project team. There are quite a few other of us, and we will review every single application that comes in. We then will interview some of the people in that initial applications and make a shortlist. The shortlist goes to the jury, and the jury is the final deciding body. They are made up of senior Googlers and sometimes some external experts as well. I'll leave you with some tips. Please do read the full T's and C's and the FAQ online very carefully. Remember that we don't fund content creation. We're looking for projects that should not be longer than 1 year. We won't fund training and education projects. We do fund collaborative projects, very keen on those. You will need to come up with clear indicators and a defined monetization component. Please think about the impact you're going to have on the news ecosystem. That really is what this is all about. We want to have the most impact we can on the news ecosystem. and describe how you plan to share that learnings, how you will inspire others. And myself and the rest of the Innovation Challenge project team is happy to answer any questions on this email alias here, meagnichallenge@google.com. When you're setting about applying, which I hope you do, please do take the download of the PDF and have a good look through it, obviously, but also it'll help you to work on it rather than working on the online. We do need it entered online, but obviously it'll take you a little while to work through the PDF. Say the timeline, 12th of April is your next date to bear in mind, because the applications will close. I've given you the email address, and this is the shortcode to all the details. So g.co/news innovation. And I'll stop there for questions, because I'm sorry, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour that, but hopefully I can also, you've got the recording obviously of this, and you can follow up with me with any questions to that email address as well. But I can take any questions you've got now for the next 4 minutes or so.
Yeah, so let's jump straight into it. Any questions for Sarah regarding even the application process? Any questions regarding the eligibility? I will jump straight into a question that I think the rest of our community who might not be all here today would be interested to know. In terms of, Sarah, you say that it's open for both big organizations and individual freelancers as well. Will the same selection criteria be applied to both?
Yes, the selection criteria is for everyone. So the application process is exactly the same, whether you're a small, 3 or 4 person newsroom or big conglomerate. So do take your time with it. If you're from a small organization, it can be some work to put in. I appreciate that, but we will need the same questions answering.
Thank you. Someone raised, Yannick has a question.
Yes, Sarah, just one more question on that matter. Thanks a lot for the presentation, highly appreciated.
I'm sorry, it's so quick.
What about the track record of individuals or organizations applying? Do you have to be able to show, a certain amount of professional history for the application?
It obviously helps with the feasibility of what you propose. If you've done something similar before, or this is your field of expertise, or you've got that expertise from elsewhere. So it will always enhance your application if you've got a good track record. That said, we have supported in the past many startups. So it's providing you can show the feasibility of what you're doing and why you think you're the best person to come to it. We'll obviously take that into account. So don't let that put you off. As I say, we have funded startups in the past. I would advise to have a look at the website and the previous selected recipients as well, to get an idea of what it is we're looking for. And also, we will be doing more of these sessions. So if you start work on your application and then you suddenly think, oh, I've got loads of questions, we'll be doing some more kind of longer town hall webinars in the coming weeks. If you can sort of join in with me or email me or join in with me on LinkedIn, and you'll see I'll promote them as we get to them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before Sarah shoots off? Last chance? Not last chance. We'll contact her later. Yeah, Jalal. Jalal, go ahead with your question. Huh?
Jalal, you're muted.
Maybe we can, Mustafa, you've got a question as well?
Yes, I have one question about the challenges that you faced when you built this platform.
Sorry, the question?
Jalal,
What were the challenges you faced?
Yeah, exactly. I think I have problem with connection.
Jalal, I think we're going to just keep questions focused on the actual challenge, the application for the innovation challenge. But I think, Mostafa, you've got a question.
Yes, hi Sarah and hi everyone. Thank you for the presentation also. Like I'm just reading the part that is related, what information is required for my application. And if we go to Article B, it mentions location, URL, number of employees, and number of journalists. Let's consider we are not a media organization, but we are an organization, an international organization that is willing to train journalists on many topics related to governance or related to how to do digital storytelling or something related to practicing good governance or good governance lessons. So are we eligible to apply for this grant?
Did you say it was for training of journalists?
Yes, let's consider I work in many organizations, but mainly I work on Democracy Reporting International. So it's a German NGO, but somehow we are working. We have a program right now which deals with journalists to train them on governance topics related to for example, for some laws about access to information, about anti-corruption. So we are going to train them on many topics related to investigative journalism, digital storytelling. So if we are not a media organization, are we eligible to apply for this grant?
So the fact that you're an NGO, you could be eligible. Where is your NGO based?
It's based in Berlin.
In Berlin?
Yes, but we have 8 offices in the world.
Okay, so you wouldn't be eligible for this particular innovation challenge because it is for countries in the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, unless your NGO was based there. But what you said, if I'm right, is that a lot of the work you do is about training journalists in kind of democracy reporting and things. We don't support training programs, so it wouldn't be eligible both for the country and for the activity. Because we're really looking for digital projects. So we're looking for people that are going to sort of reinvent their business model or come up with a new product or service or technology. So it wouldn't be eligible for those reasons. But as an NGO, if you were based in the eligible countries, you could, it's not the fact that you're an NGO, it's the activity that you're projecting.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Okay.
Great. I would say I'll take over here. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks everybody for the questions. This was highly appreciated. Maybe just one additional comment. As you know, as CWES, we work a lot with startups. So if anybody from this group here has an idea about an innovation and wants to exchange, we're also more than happy to look at it a bit more from the innovation angle to align with this innovation idea that you've presented in your presentation, Sarah. If anybody wants some inputs from this core group. On that note, Sarah, do you have any closing remarks? Otherwise, I would move us on in the agenda of the day.
Thank you. And well, please do reach out to the email address, or as I say, we will have some other events, so you can come along and ask more detailed questions should you wish.
Thank you so much. Extremely appreciated that you could join us.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
On that note, welcome to everybody from my end as well. It's nice to have so many of you here, so many familiar faces, and it's going to be tricky not to talk to each one of you individually. But before introducing Nick, I'll come to you in 1 second, Nick. I just quickly also want to welcome Nadia here, who is here from SDC. Nadia Benani has been supporting us in the Blue Peas Media Lab, and I just want to recognize your presence here. Do you want to say a couple of words, or should?
No,
maybe
I
just
think you all of you have more interesting things to say, and really curious to hear from all of you.
great. Okay, but now you all know Nadia, which might be nice for you to have in the back of your mind. The format, just as a quick remark on the side, we've tried to squeeze it into a lot shorter time frame. So we go with very crisp inputs. We had a quick introduction round where you hopefully got to see a few people. Quick input on an opportunity, which is an element that we want to maintain in these communities of practice where just funding opportunities are being sourced, quickly presented, may not always be relevant for everybody. But I think with the continuity, it may provide really interesting insights into where you could fund your work. And then, of course, we want to pick up a number of topics that could be either inspiring or are key to the work of journalists. And on that note, we have the great pleasure of having Nick here with us. Nick is the founder and executive director of Water Witness, which is an organization that focuses, Nick, you can say a few more words about, but very strongly around accountability in the whole nexus of civil society, corporate engagement in water, et cetera, et cetera. And in that context, I do recall, I think the first time I heard Nick talking about journalism around this topic was, Nick, correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but around 10 years ago, with more innovative ideas of how to connect production patterns in developing countries with media outlets, more in northern countries to increase accountability, and lots of interesting ideas, always with the link towards accountability. On that note, without further ado, Nick, I would hand over to you.
Thanks, Yannick, and what a great pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. As Yannick said, I run an organisation called Water Witness International. We are a team of about 15 water scientists working around the world. And what we try and do is understand what's really going on the ground and use that knowledge to hold governments, donors and corporations to account for improved performance on water, for water justice, for water equity and sustainable water management, climate resilience. When Hannah and Yannick invited me to speak to you today, I jumped at the chance. If there's anything I've learned, it's coming up to 30 years that I've been working on water at the moment. And the one thing I know is that good media coverage can be the difference between solving a water problem and affecting accountability and a problem lasting for many years and affecting many thousands of people. So I'm really keen to speak to you today. I also want to leave chance to listen to you, because I'm very keen to hear from you how the water community and water scientists can help journalists more effectively cover water issues. So I want to leave some time to ask you some questions. I've got some slides to remind me of the points I want to cover. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Here we go. All right, so, oh, you can see that. Hang on. I'm just trying to hide me so you don't see. Here we go. Great. So I'm going to spend about 10-15 minutes just talking broadly about water and the importance of journalism in accountability for water management. This image was produced several years ago to illustrate some of the equity challenges that are faced in most countries in the world where water flows towards money. And a common theme through my talk will be the importance of scrutiny, oversight and accountability in ensuring justice and equitable water access. So I want to spend some time talking about the important role that journalism will play. I've picked up one or two principles that contribute to good water journalism, in my opinion. And I want to inspire you with one or two case studies of good examples and bad examples. Cover some of the current issues, the hot issues, some future directions and useful links. And then, like I say, to hand over to you to say, what do you need from water scientists to help you do your job. Now, when I was putting these slides together, there are many facts and figures, rather depressing facts and figures, which tell the story of the global water crisis. You know, we do face a very severe crisis on water. I'd say one of the biggest challenges facing humanity today. 1 in 4 people live with physical water scarcity. We have 1.4 million preventable deaths each year because of poor provision of water and sanitation services. A water crisis is a major threat to the global economy and recovery from COVID. And water-related ecosystems and biodiversity are being lost faster than any other type. This image is from Lesotho. So it's a factory. It's the discharge from a factory which makes jeans for Levi's, which many of us in Europe wear. And you can see the impacts that we have through our globalized consumption. This is a topic that I'll come back to in my presentation, the nature of global water impacts. So there's a water crisis. 80% of global wastewater is released untreated. If you need any facts and figures on the crisis, we have many on our websites. You know, the evidence is there. What we're interested in is the solutions and what we can do about this crisis. What we're looking for is shared water security. Now, this is an important concept to understand, because water security isn't just about having adequate taps and toilets and good quality water that's not polluted. It's about making sure that water is available for economic production, for livelihoods, for ecosystems, as well as an acceptable level of risk from hazards like floods, droughts, pollution and water conflict. This is a definition that's widely used, something that we all want to aim for. Water security at different scales. It can be a national scale, a city scale, a household scale, a community. We all need water security. Now, what's important to understand, I'm just going to hide this and then so you can see this. Okay. It's important to understand that the world isn't running out of water. If we want to solve the crisis, we need to understand the nature of the crisis. We're not going to run out of water. You know, there's enough water for everybody on the planet for many, many, many years. The crisis is a crisis of governance. So we need to get better at sharing, at financing, at protecting and managing the water we have and using it equitably. That's really important because it focuses on what the solutions are. You know, it's not about running out of water, it's about improving governance. Now, moving on from there, water governance is determined by the performance of institutions. And all institutions are the rules that we use to govern our resources. So it's the organisations in government and elsewhere that manage our water in the public interest. Therefore, the key to good water security is that those institutions and those people and organisations responsible for water governance, they must have the resources, the money, the skills and the political authority they need to do that difficult job. And importantly, they need to be held to account for that job. And that's, in our eyes, that's the problem largely, is that those responsible for managing our water are rarely held to account for it. And that's where good journalism comes in, because journalism is part of affecting social accountability. Not legal accountability, but social accountability, where citizens, civil society, the media exact accountability through institutional performance monitoring and debate and deliberation in the public domain. It's a really important idea. Now, when we look at what makes accountability work, the evidence suggests that access to information and a strong role played by the media are really important components of social accountability. Now, we think this is so important and the role of the media at the moment is underplayed. Water is special. It's not like building an airport or a nuclear power station where if there are mistakes made or weak accountability in the quality of the product, the accountability for a faulty nuclear power station, you will notice that fairly quickly. Or if an aeroplane isn't built well, that's something that will be noticed pretty quickly. If we manage water badly, it may take many years for the impacts to be felt. At the same time, there are multiple organisations responsible for managing water. And we can actually, if it goes wrong, we can blame the weather. So scrutiny by the media to generate strong accountability for water management is super important for water. Really, especially important. It's so important that sorry about this slide, it's rather small writing. It's so important that it comes at the beginning of our global theory of change for water security over here. That strong civil society oversight and good media coverage that drives public engagement and is the engine of solutions across governance, investment, the private sector and investment in water. So to emphasize, compelling media coverage of water issues has extremely high importance in getting the solutions we need. This theory of change has now been adopted by several governments, including the UK's. So there's agreement, there's consensus that the media play a really key role in getting water issues up the political agenda. And I have no doubt at all that journalism and creative media coverage, let me try and get rid of this. Here we go, that's it. No doubt at all that quality journalism will play a central role in tackling local and global water crisis, no doubt. To do that, journalists and media houses need three things. Their coverage of the issues needs to be credible and accurate. Credible in terms of the science, and also credible in terms of the accountability mechanisms and the rules that need to be promoted and that people need to be held to account against. So credibility in the science in terms of what's really going on the ground and the evidence, that needs to be robust and accurate. It's easy for journalists to accuse somebody of pollution or from snatching water, but the evidence needs to be there to back that up. Otherwise, there's a legitimacy problem. There also needs to be accuracy in the legal frameworks that you're holding to people account to. So it's worth doing the research on exactly what the law says should be happening. The second principle is this idea of tenacity or stubbornness, persistence. We see many journalists covering water issues where they'll do a story one day, which looks great, and then they'll forget the story. The problem will persist. So there needs to be or continued coverage of the issues to reach a solution. And related to that, there needs to be clear advocacy targets around who needs to do what to solve a problem. Now, this is where our links with civil society and water scientists can help you, because there are many people out there who can help you think through what the solutions to ask for are. So credibility, persistence, and clear advocacy targets. We can come back to those. Some examples of where it's worked well. This example's slightly dated now, but it's probably one of the best examples of unsustainable water resource management anywhere in the world. In Peru, driven by Europe's import of fresh fruit and vegetables, in particular asparagus. Because asparagus is a profitable crop, it's spread throughout the deserts of Peru, where it rains. It's one of the driest places on the planet. It rains less than 1 millimeter of rainfall a year. Now, the groundwater that supplies the irrigation is being used unsustainably to the degree where the groundwater is falling up to 4 meters a year, and people are shooting each other over ownership of boreholes. And that's all driven by the purchase by European supermarkets of asparagus. Now, when the media picked up this story, they did a really good job. They used compelling images, they made it front page news, and they covered it for several weeks. The result was that the supermarkets purchasing from Peru adopted new sustainability standards. More importantly, the journalistic coverage triggered the reforms in the global financing institutions that funded the development of the sector, so that the International Finance Corporation reformed its entire water risk management portfolio. And that was a really important contribution that we can link to quality journalism of the issues that used reliable evidence in compelling ways. A less successful example is this one in Tanzania. This is probably the best example of uncontrolled pollution affecting millions, several tens of thousands of people downstream. So the pipe you can see there discharges textile effluent. It makes the pH of the river to be 13, which is caustic, and it's full of chromium-6, which is a carcinogen, and it affects tens of thousands of people downstream. Now, the factory is alleged to be owned by the funders of the political party that are in power in Tanzania. The vice president has been to the site himself to take samples and to ask them to stop. And yet, 8 years later, the factory continues to pollute. The media coverage of this case is inadequate. It's not covered. It's a big story. It affects a lot of people in Tanzania's biggest city. The media are sleeping on this topic. That's not in the public interest. I'll show you a quick video, if I may. I might be running out of time. This is probably the most effective and value for money piece of journalism I've seen.
We're not seeing the video in case it's already playing.
Damn, hang on. Right, I'm not sure that's going to work. Hang on. Here we go. I'll show that if we've got time later. Just let me get back to this, make sure. Hang on. Sorry, bear with me. Share screen. Back to the presentation. Apologies. So I'll show that video, but basically it was an example of some evidence gathered on a smartphone, which was then published a day later at no cost, seen by a minister. And that drove immediate change, which affected millions of people's well-being around water. And I'll show you that video later if we get a chance. Some current issues. Obviously, water is up there in terms of the COVID response. So in terms of issues you might want to cover and that have relevance to the wider water community, the need, the role of sustainable access to water supply sanitation in terms of COVID control is obviously up there on the agenda. Water conflict and conflict resolution is a consistently key issue for public interest journalism. And of course, climate change impacts water grabs, the human right to water, and we can provide more information about what that means and what all governments should be doing in terms of delivering on the human right to water. Of course, pollution control and the role of industrial pollution in impacting ecosystems. A particular hot topic for journalistic coverage is the performance of government, corporations and donors on water. That's a really important area for accountability coverage. And this last item I'll talk briefly about is water footprints and trade. Yannick recalls a story that I spoke to him 10 years ago about, which is the need for us to link consumption in the global north, in Europe, to the places of production where water is used to produce food, commodities, clothing, in other parts of the world. You might be aware of this. There's a methodology called water footprinting. What it shows is that, for example, in the UK, for the water needs for our consumption, we use, or 62% of the water that we need is sourced elsewhere in the world. So that every citizen in the UK, whilst they use about 1 bathtub full of British water every day to meet their needs, they also use 30 bathtubs of water of other people's water elsewhere in the world through the virtual water embedded in the things we consume. Now this is crazy because you've got countries that aren't water scarce, consuming water in countries where there is acute water scarcity. Not that consumption is always a bad thing because it creates jobs and foreign direct investment. What we need to do is to look at the footprint and make sure that it's sustainable and equitable and fair. So we're about to launch an initiative called Fair Water Footprints, which will do research around the world to look at the European water footprint and ensure or explore whether it is equitable and fair. And it would be great to talk more about that. That's going to be funded by, we hope, by SDC. And will be launched later this year. And that's definitely something that we should speak to this group about once it's launched. But it's basically looking at the accountability of water use in globalized production chains. My final slide here is useful links. Our website can be useful. Get in touch with me if there's anything we can help you on. There's also an organization called Circle of Blue, which specializes in water journalism. I haven't put the links to the websites here, but I can share those. There's a news group called Uska News, which again specialise in water issues, and they are looking for journalist members around the world. And of course, the Guardian Development Desk are always interested in compelling stories about water and development. That's a whistle-stop tour of some of the issues and why journalism is so important. I hope it's provided some interesting think points for you. Much more to talk about, too little time. I'd like to hear from you. What do journalists need to support tenacious coverage of water issues, and how can we help you as a community of water scientists, and what are the barriers to and opportunities for good water journalism and water? It'd be great to hear how we can collaborate down the line. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nick. And maybe just as a quick reminder, everybody who can, please switch on your cameras again. Thank you very much, Nick. Over to everybody for questions to Nick and What to Witness. I would say, let's take another 10-15 minutes for questions and exchange. We'll wrap up very quickly afterwards.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Nick. That was really amazing. I really appreciate that your perspective really takes into consideration human rights and justice. And at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned equitable distribution of water and the examples that you brought in. I think this brings, at least work brings like vivid memories and continuous things happening in Palestine. With regards to violations, whereby communities are the, marginalized communities and vulnerable communities are the ones that pay the price for water policies. And in our situation, it's mostly geopolitical, as you know, because of the occupation. And it brings to mind, you mentioned accountability and the necessity to have the tools for governance. And here there's a lack of jurisdiction. In a sense, even though there are internal issues that journalism is playing a massive role in, but at the larger scale, I think it's a problem of jurisdiction, where it turns into advocacy in these cases. So I guess I'm interested to hear your perspective on what could be effective in these kind of circumstances where it feels like it's hopeful. Number one, where it's a larger interboundary conflict situation. And also, another question to you is on your initiative to I don't remember the name of it, for Europe's involvement in
Fair water footprints.
Fair water footprints. Yes, exactly. Would companies from Europe apply in these cases? Because we have many major corporations that are involved in water projects and wastewater projects in Palestine and Jordan. So I'm wondering whether that applies and whether the accountability there would also fall on them, I guess.
Great questions. You know, accountability depends on rules and responsibilities being in place. I guess with the situation in Palestine, or where they don't exist, the task of the water community or the journalistic community is to tell the story in compelling ways, which gets it to the audience, so that there's a response. And you know, that struggle's been ongoing for many years. You know, it doesn't get the coverage it deserves. And I often question the way that media editors' desks work, and the stories that get coverage. You know, we've had a firestorm around, you know, not that it's an insignificant story, but the activities of the royals in the UK, when there are many more important issues around justice and sustainable resource use to be covered. So I think the challenge is, and that's where journalists and partnerships with journalists, between journalists and water scientists, are really important, is to tell the stories in compelling ways that grab people's attention and grab that political will. We know from water scientists that evidence alone won't do it. You know, we've been banging our heads against that wall for decades. We need to collaborate to tell the story in ways which people, the public and politicians, engage with. I don't think there's a magic bullet there. There's about trying different ways and working together. In terms of fair water footprints, the focus is really on corporations that produce using water. So whether it's tomato growers or the mining companies, rather than companies that are involved in the provision of water. In this instance, there's definitely a need for accountability on the latter, but we're looking at the water footprint of a consumer in Europe, of a citizen in Europe, and saying, well, hang on, your consumption of these things has an impact in these places. What are you going to do about it? You know, what pressure can you put on your retailers, on the investors, and on the companies that are producing to demand stronger accountability? But I'm sure there are many examples of companies producing across Middle East and North Africa that we can focus on.
Great. I'm looking around.
Yeah,
Additional questions? If not, while everybody's thinking, Nick, yes, please.
Yeah, one question from my side on you know, a bit, Nick, because I think that there are not so many organizations that play this role in the water sector, of this kind of watchdog of the water sector. So it's really interesting to have you today. So I take this opportunity to ask also, looking at, I worked for many years in the disaster risk reduction sector, and looking at the dynamic at multilateral level as well. And I felt that there's a super strong structure, a kind of alliances of you know, constructed civil society that keeps on questioning also progress in terms of what all the countries together have set goals for disaster risk reduction. Was the Sendai framework, but now we have this wonderful opportunity to follow on the SDG 6 as well. And I felt that the water sector still doesn't have a kind of accompanying the whole process with having this, you know, the other side of a kind of watchdog or shadow report of the progress. So how, and I think the journalists can here, all the media can have a crucial role in that, is really each countries have signed for this SDG 6, so it's quite, the targets are obvious. They're all here, and you can all read about your respective countries' progress, because they have to report on that. So what would it be also an entry point for journalists to follow up on that and try to push for a kind of alliances of civil society to shadow report a bit what's going on in terms of progress, of taking this multilateralism as an opportunity to push forward some specific issues in the respective countries.
Nadia, that's a great idea. That accountability around delivery of SDG 6 is part of the challenge, and there's a key role for journalists to play on that with partners in civil society. One of the challenges we see, and something we're trying to address, are the systemic weaknesses in civil society that have been cultivated, and they're a real problem. There's an assumption that civil society can and will play a watchdog role. Now that role is really important, but in many countries it's a fantasy. There just simply aren't the resources or the political freedoms for civil society to fulfill that role. And without it, there's a risk that poor accountability will go unchallenged. Yeah. So one of the areas we're looking at now is working with partners across the water sector through an initiative called Accountability for Water to look at that problem and say, well, what can be done to strengthen in the long term or medium to long term civil society's ability, and that includes the media, to hold institutions to account on water. There's a problem because a lot of the funding for that work comes from US foundations, for example. But at the same time, the work is inherently political. So there's a legitimacy challenge in many countries when entities funded externally try and affect political accountability, soft accountability, let's say. And that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be understood and handled and not shied away from. So there's a whole range of challenges there. You're right. There's an opportunity for journalists to get stuck into this agenda, SDG 6, working with civil society coalitions, and shining a light on all of these issues.
Great, thanks. Let's see, do we have additional questions? Yes, please, May.
Adding to what Nadia and Nick said, first of all, thank you, Nick, for the very interesting presentation. Here in Lebanon, the civil society managed with the media to prevent the of Bisri Dam. So there was a campaign, and with the info presented by the scientists, water scientists, and civil society, the media together with the civil society made a campaign, and they managed to stop the building of this dam. But in Lebanon, it's everything is highly politicized. So this was like an exception, because it came at a moment where there was a revolution in the country, and all these, there was an enabling environment that helps the journalists to stop this project. It was funded by the World Bank. But you see other issues of pollution, for instance, on the Litani, despite all the reports and the articles and all the huge work done by journalists, the pollution is still going on, and we don't see any substantial progress, despite all the funds and all the support, whether from the World Bank, EU, or the US aid. And still we have a lot of problems, and the factories there that are dumping their waste in the river, and the refugees there are also on the banks of the river. They are still there, and we don't see any major progress.
That sounds like a really interesting case. What do you think would be needed to make progress? Is there work that the water scientists could do to assist there, or what's the bottleneck? Politics, or?
Yes, the situation is highly politicized in Lebanon. So there are a lot of political interests, for example, in the Litani River area for many businessmen. So they are affiliated with the political elite. So it's very hard to do penalties against them, even though there are a lot of cancer cases in Barlies area. Many have died, and they have the highest ratio of cases in cancer. And until now, we don't see any major progress or any alternatives of solution to this pollution crisis.
That's an interesting case. It would be interesting to know if there are multinational companies involved in that pollution problem, and we could elevate the issue to this, for example, the shareholders of that company, whether if it's somewhere in Europe.
No.
You know, just to see how the political economy works.
No, it's more on the local level. So it's not the multilateral companies who are doing the pollution. So it's the local companies who are affiliated with the political elite in Lebanon.
Can I come in with a complementary question here towards you, Nick, which I think links the points that Nidal also pointed to at the beginning. So for me, one of the questions would also be, how can we connect journalists that work in very complicated political contexts that are quite frankly dangerous every now and then, to more international media outlets that actually, you know, provide a bit more of an elevated ground to give attention to what is going on? Because I think here, picking up, May, your issue, right, with the international debate about aid for Lebanon now after the Beirut blast and all of these things, of course, it's an entry point to start looking into key governance challenges. And I think what you pointed out at the beginning, Nidal, links a bit to the same situation where the political economy is just not very conducive towards reporting in country. And I think here what we've discussed in several occasions is how then a bridge could be made towards more international outlets here, where, of course, in the UK you have The Guardian or different other outlets that already had a focus on the water sector. If you have any thoughts on that, and if that could maybe also play into the case that May was referring to, that would be interesting.
Beyond those networks that I've mentioned, I'm not sure. I'm personally trying to understand or as an organization, we're trying to understand those linkages. So how does the global news media operate in terms of its support and interaction with local journalists and vice versa? You know, we need to understand that landscape in order to support those linkages, but I don't think we're there yet. It'd be interesting to revisit that question in a few years. What we're trying to do with the Fair Water Footprints work, we've got a commitment to work with us from The Guardian for those guys to give us coverage of some of the stories. Now, that's not guaranteed, obviously, depending on what's happening on the news day. So, you know, our experience of working with journalists at that scale has been a challenge. Jan, I could probably mention to you that we negotiated access to the Kenyan flower farms for a team of journalists who spent a week there with our negotiation with the flower farmers to cover a good news story about pollution control and water stewardship. It turned out the story that they led with was one of tax avoidance by those flower farms. So, you know, difficult, because that's what the editor wanted, which left us with a bit of a reputational problem with the flower farmers. But yeah, we're struggling with that as well. We don't know the answer, I don't think.
I have a question here, taking on from what you've just said, Nick. In terms of approaching news outlets, at what point does the water journalist compromise in terms of making water a sexy topic? I mean, I think that's probably what you're describing. The news outlets want audience, they want engagement, they want people to actually read it and carry on reading about it. So where do you draw the line?
I think that the stories tell themselves. I mean, you know, the question at the beginning of the session about how do you maintain integrity, independence, impartiality, I'd say always lean on the evidence. The evidence is strong that water's a good that we all need. Yeah, and you don't need to look very far to find tragic stories of where water injustice are affecting people in terrible ways. Now, so the evidence can speak for itself. I guess the challenge is to make it compelling in a way which will be picked up by the media outlets. So that's one of the purposes of the Fair Water Footprints campaign, is to link water impacts around the world to the readers in Europe. Yeah, so how does it affect you? How are you involved? How are you implicated? What should you do about it? What can you do about it? So it's finding ways to make the news in that way, which I think will help get the issues picked up. Of course, climate is fantastic to see the way that climate issues have been, or the climate emergency has been picked up, and that list of issues, to my mind, that's some of the angles that you might want to approach the topics with to get them picked up. So the links to climate change, the links to COVID, the stories can tell themselves, really. You don't need me to tell you about good journalism and what gets picked up, but I think there's a responsibility not to manipulate the evidence, not to exaggerate stories. I think there's a risk of that, of a crisis narrative and presenting one side of a story that some journalists are guilty of. So yeah, lean on the evidence and find, there's everywhere you look, there are compelling stories about water justice.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick. I think if I ask for more questions, we'll get more, but I will not do so because we actually set out to keep this a short and crisp session. But I think we could all go on with this discussion probably for another hour. However, I would say maybe we see if we reconnect further down the road with you and with your initiative and with this group of journalists. Nick, one question. The presentation you held, would you be willing to share that with this group here?
Of course, yeah.
That would be great. I think it's always nice just if anybody wants to refer back to it. Then on that note here at this point already, Nick, I think I speak on behalf of everybody. It's a pleasure listening to you. It's always really, really inspiring. And I think it hopefully triggered a few thoughts amongst this group. So in that sense, really, thank you very much for taking the time, preparing this great input and sharing a few additional perspectives that start from accountability, but have then very much of a link, as you said, to questions of ethics, of what is needed to actually achieve that. Thank you. Now, just to wrap things up today, we had a couple of things that some of the participants here highlighted as worth mentioning around the topic. I think I have 3 on the list. One links to an upcoming webinar. Marta, do you want to say something about that quickly?
Yes, sure. Yeah, so I don't know if I think you are all familiar here with the Unwash and what we are doing in the Unwash initiative from Revolve, but if not, I would share a link, but I don't want to steal too much time. But we are having a webinar upcoming 24th of March. So it's to celebrate World Water Day, but we know World Water Day gets very busy, so we are not doing it in the same day. And we will be talking about innovative campaigns on how to restore river ecosystems. So we will be presenting either grassroots campaigns or artistic communication initiatives or projects. So river ecosystem from a communication point of view. So you're all invited. I will share the link here in the chat, and I think it can be a good place to continue with this conversation around water and the importance of ecosystems.
Thank you, Marta. Then Mustafa, if you're still with us, nice to have you around again. I understand you wanted to just make a bit of a mention of a specific topic that you've been looking into with oil spill in front of the Lebanese coast. Do you want to come in on that quickly?
Yes, hi Yannick, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, regarding the oil spill, since I'm like writing an article about it, so I want to know if we have any specific idea on how to talk about the water management regarding the pollution and regarding maybe the sea intrusion, since we have sea intrusion between the seawater and the like fresh water. So I don't know if CWAS can advise on this.
Spontaneously not, but I'll quite frankly also look into the round here if anybody has comments. Otherwise, I think we can start looking and hearing around a little bit and see if we can find somebody who could be helpful. So just to see, Mustafa, if I understood correctly, so one of the challenges you're looking at is the current oil spill in front of the coast and how that actually affects the whole also freshwater supply through the seawater intrusion, right? And then therefore also the pollution entering the groundwater reserves at the coastal areas,
yes,
correct?
somehow, because like since the most affected area is Nakura and Tir Reserve Coast, and like those places are considered one of biodiversity hotspots in Lebanon. And somehow like we have what's called Ras Al Ain spring. It's a freshwater spring directly on the sea in Lebanon. It's like about 16 meters far from the shore. So somehow we are very curious about the pollution effects from the oil spill. I know it reached around 40 kilometers from Israel shores to our shores, but somehow those are very hotspots for biodiversity, and they are badly damaged.
Great. Yeah, just a question into the round. Also looking at you, May, do you have any ideas about this also specifically in Lebanon or anybody else?
Yes, if you allow me.
Yes, please.
Yes, Mustafa, if you'd like, I can connect you with a fellow environmental journalist and expert, actually, who's based in Haifa, and he's writing in an environmental magazine here in Palestine. I think he would have good information, even maybe from the ground, because he's close up north here. I think it's a big topic now, and I don't think it's gotten enough coverage, this oil spill. The Israeli media has covered it somewhat. The Palestinian media has covered it a bit less. But there are experts in Palestine, I think, that can help you with your story, who are also environmental journalists that can help you with that. Regarding water intrusion, saltwater intrusion, that's a big topic that we're dealing with in Gaza. So also, if you need any recommendations on that, we can get in contact, I think.
Yes, thank you, Nidal. I would appreciate that, because somehow I'm bringing like satellite images from different sources. Also, I'm bringing images from the CNRS, which is the National Council for Scientific Research. And I'm following with many institutions. Like I collected all the sources from Lebanon, and I collected like very exclusive images for this. But I just want also to have the other sources from the next place, which is from Israel or from occupied Palestine. So I would be very glad if you could connect me with this person.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. If you can maybe write your email, or
yes, sure.
I don't know if he's on the list. Yeah, that would be great, Mustafa. We'll get in contact.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else, please write directly to Mustafa in the chat. We'll also listen around and see if we can come up with additional ideas. On that note, we have one additional point. Cora came across an interesting resource we wanted to mention that is linked to the whole topic of ethics in water journalism or journalism in general. Cora, do you want to quickly introduce this?
Yes, so this is just a website where you'll find all sorts of resources for doing accountable, more responsible journalism. I'll share it here with you on the chat, but I'm sure, I mean, Nick has mentioned many other resources, so I think this is an amazing space that we have here with the community of practice, just share resources that will really help fellow journalists. It's so yeah, the resources are by Ethical Journalism Network, and they have lots of great stuff there. So just give it a browse. I'm sure you're all journalists. I'm sure you already know about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Cora. Then in that sense, to wrap up the day today, again, please keep in mind a bit where we started during the first community of practice in December. What we did there was we collected a number of topics towards the end of the session, right? And one that stuck out was ethics in journalism. What we tried to do was we tried to figure out and pick up what might be interesting. And we'd like to continue along that path, that maybe you share a few additional topics that could be interesting for you. What we'll do is we'll take the freedom to try to make something out of it. So Nick's input was, of course, not purely focused on water ethics, but it's built around that topic roughly. And we would proceed like that, hoping that we maybe not hit gold, but don't hit too far from the center of the bullseye, right? We had prepared another little interactive exercise, but I think we want to keep this short. Stop the session now, but this is why I would ask everybody to share thoughts on what you think would be interesting topics in the chat. We'll just pick it up from there, sort through it, see where we can find interesting fits, what we could make out of the topics. And then we would invite you again to another community. Hannah, when another session in 2 months?
Yes, exactly. So we've already set a tentative date for the third community of practice, which is going to take place on the 4th of May. So in round about 2 months. And then we hope to do this really on a bi-monthly basis, at least throughout the year, you know. So here I would definitely also encourage all of you, if you have people in your network, Nidal, you already mentioned that you might have some people who would be a good fit for this kind of, you know, interactive group. So if you have anyone that you would like to bring, you know, into this group, it's completely your choice. We trust you and we trust that you know for whom this might be interesting. So please don't hesitate to approach us. And Cora has also gone ahead and set up a WhatsApp group. So what we're going to do from here on out is, if we come across funding opportunity, today we were really lucky because we came across the Google News Innovation Challenge just a few days before the event. We were like, okay, this is perfect for the community, you know, so if we can get Sarah in and have her presented, that's obviously the best case scenario. But we would also take the liberty to share any other kinds of opportunities that we come across. And of course, you can do the same for your peers, right? Also, like Yannick said, I saw Mustafa already posted Water Social Justice, which is really cool. I think it's And Invisible Water by Marta. Okay, it's coming in. But you can also, if you come up with something, you know, while cooking later tonight or something, you can also just post it in the WhatsApp group, and we're going to be looking at that and seeing how we can build a structure around this. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think we can close it here. Sorry for going a little bit over time. We tried our best, but with Zoom and, you know, online events, it never really quite works to fit in the schedule. But we were super happy to have all of you here. I think, Nick, this input was, I mean, I was just glued to the screen. It was amazing. And I really hope that everyone has also drawn some inspiration from this. And I think, Nick, if you want to, you know, be around for the next sessions, or if you want to connect with the community here, we're more than happy to make this happen. And yeah, with that, I would say I release you into your evening. Any final comments, remarks, suggestions, feedback from anyone? Please go ahead.
Can I just say, regarding the WhatsApp group, if you haven't been added yet and you would like to be in it, please share your number with me. And we can, it's also somewhere where we can carry on the discussion. If you have any ideas for the next meeting, you can share it there as well.
And before we go, can we have a group picture?
One
where
I've taken a few sneaky ones.
Hannah, I think Nick has your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'll pick up with Yannick and Hannah later, but I wonder if, you know, there's a whole community out there that I think would be keen to speak to you. I know a group of water scientists and water lawyers who specialise in the Middle East and the Palestine water issues. I'd be happy to introduce you guys to those folks. It's part of the London Water Research Group who they're studying under, but a really important group of well, bank of knowledge for you to draw on.
That would be amazing. That sounds
Thank
really
you.
fun.
But a pleasure to meet you all.
Same.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. It was great to have you all with us, as always. And I look forward to the May session then.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Nick.
Bye.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Have a nice evening.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
May.
Jalal, are you staying behind just to clarify the question? Can you hear us?
Yes, Cora. Yes, I'm listening to you now.
I'm sorry, I think you had a question earlier that maybe we didn't quite understand because of the bad internet connection.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I cut you off.
Yeah, I asked you the question in the beginning of the session. They really sorry, I have a problem of connection, but I was asked about the challenges.
So when you say challenges, were you referring to the challenges of the Google News initiative? The challenges.
Sorry, I can't listen to you. Problem. I don't know if the problem of connection.
Can you hear us?
You can just write us, Jalal. Like you can write it in the WhatsApp group, for example, or and then if we can answer it, we
sorry.
can.
I can't listen to you. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Problem.
I think we'll pick it up next time, Jalal, when the internet connection is better, okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
So sorry, I don't know.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Cora. Thank you.
Bye, Jalal. Take care.
I guess we can now officially stop the recording. And
yeah, true. Good point. All right.